results. And then once we get the results back from Dr. Kittles, we send them to you. Now, I always get asked, are you going to be able to tell me where in Africa I'm from? We test DNA. We're called African Ancestry because we're here. Our mission is to transform the way that people of African descent view themselves, the way we view ourselves, and the way we view Africa. But we have no control over where your DNA came from. So if it is African, we're going to break it all the way down and tell you where and what people, but it may not be African. Because inherent in us being African American means there was some mixing going on, right? And so if it's not African, we'll tell you what it is. Is it European? Is it Native American? Is it Asian? Is it Middle Eastern? We'll tell you that at a macro level. We won't be able to tell you whether it's Choctaw or Seminole or anything like that. So, okay, before I get to that, I just wanted to kind of break this down again from the family tree. So, again, we're not going to tell you everywhere you're from in your family tree. We can't. We're looking at one branch at a time. So if you trace your yellow dot, whether you're a man or a woman, it's going to give you this branch, okay? And in my case, it goes back to Nigeria. If you're a man and you take the paternal test, it's going to give you this branch. And in this case, it may go back to Angola, for example. But it's not going to tell you anything about any of these other people. If you want to learn something about any of these other people, you need different family members to take the test, okay? Because we can only look at one branch at a time. Now, let's talk about what we find. When we trace the yellow dot, the maternal line, what percentage of the time do you think the results come back Native American? How many people say 50% of the time? For African Americans, 50% of the time? How many people say 40% of the time? 20% of the time? 10% of the time? Never? Okay, half of this room didn't vote. I told y'all I came all the way here. Oh, I didn't go. I said never.
Oh, well, 10 to
10. Oh, okay, 10 to never. You're in the 10 to never?
Yeah.
Okay, 10 to never. I'm sorry. When we trace the yellow dot, we find African results 92% of the time, European results 6% of the time, and Native American 2% of the time. Very low. So for all of you who've been told that picture of your great-great-grandmother with her hair down to here and her pointy nose, most of you, it's not because she was Native American. Might be. For 2% of you, it will be the truth. But for the rest of you, it has something to do with mixing with other cultures outside of Native American ones. Okay, let's talk about the blue dot, the father side. What percentage of the time do you think we find African results? How many people say 100% of the time, black men who take this test, their blue dot goes back to Africa? How many of you say 90%? 80%? 70%? 60 or lower? Okay, you guys are the winners. Well, no, you're not the winners. The 70%ers were the winners. I need to come up here and take math. Okay, so 65% of the paternal lineages we trace go back to Africa. And the majority of the people who take our test are African American or people of African descent. Virtually all the rest of the time, it goes back to Europe. And it doesn't matter whether you look like me or whether you look like this brother here in terms of skin color. Skin color doesn't matter because we're not looking at the part of the DNA for skin color. We're looking at the part of the DNA for paternal ancestry. And so intellectually, historically, yes?
I'm just saying, just because it's in Europe, right, it doesn't mean that it could have been Africans in Europe, right?
Well, the people in the database self-report as their families being indigenous to those areas.
But Africans were indigenous to Europe first before the Europeans got here.
Exactly, but we're only going back 500 to 2,000 years. So if you're right, but in the time period of this analysis, most likely they would be European. But now we understand it historically, right? The Caroline explained to us about the names and how the names of white men entered into our family trees. Well, if a Portuguese slaveholder fathers a son with an enslaved Ivorian woman, is the son living in Mississippi going to be black or white? He's going to be black. It's not a trick question. He's going to be black. And he's going to have black sons who have black sons who have black sons, generally speaking. But if we look at the blue dot, that goes back to Portugal, right? Not anywhere else. And so that would explain genetically why we see such a low percentage of African ancestry in paternal lines versus maternal lines.